The 10 most dangerous tools ever known to man. Okay, these are the 10 tools that we have developed with our hands that I think warrant the most serious training before their use. Otherwise, you will hurt yourself or others. I'm not against tools. Hey, it's just a tool, right? So this is just a tool. I hope we all understand that. It's not inherently bad or inherently good. Depends on the user's alignment. We're going to go through a list of 10 that I think are the most deadly ones. And then if you guys have some to add at the end, please share what I might have overlooked, okay, according to your point of view, because we're all going to have a different view of this. Number 10, modern weaponry. Okay, so that's got to be on the list. There's no doubt that we have mechanized all sorts of ways to lacerate and perforate each other and to blow each other into smithereens and light each other on fire and all kinds of terrible things. Artillery is the king of battle, right? What is it? Fragmentation weapons are like over 70% or something terrible on the battlefield. We got airplanes. We can drop precision munitions, mortars, guided artillery rounds, machine guns, grenades, rockets, all that stuff, right? Drones, that's a big one on the battlefield now. Man, mass killing at a distance has been a very, very dangerous invention. Why? Well, it's easier. It's easier for people that maybe shouldn't be considering that as an option to have it as an option. So that can be good or evil. They say God created man and Sam Colt made them equal. That's kind of true in a funny way, isn't it? So now your sketchy, undisciplined person can dish it out just as effectively as someone who's been very disciplined. It's the days of being a skilled swordsman. You know, some of those disciplines imply skills and discipline to even get them. But if it's mechanized, man, it's just a lot more potentially hazardous, right, guys? Now, that being said, you know me, I'm Rex. I love pointy objects. I think everyone ought to have the best kind of pointy objects they make. I think they ought to sell, grenades at Walmart in the blister packs for $11.99 or whatever they should cost. Yeah, I do. I think they should sell mortar at the hardware store. I'm not against weapons, but the psychological leverage from being able to obliterate entire villages over the horizon facilitates mass, horrible, horrific situations from a distance to where there's no real moral accountability. There's no honor required. You're just lobbing stuff over the horizon. MLRS, hit a switch and erase an entire grid from the map, some kid eating Cheetos. Now you tell me that doesn't require a lot of discipline to wield properly. It does. That's why I'm a proponent of using firearms as a tool or an instrument of learning for discipline, because it's very natural to see that in the world, right? So it's like, obviously, if you're going to swing a sword around, you should have some kind of discipline. That's why it was cool in the old days to be into fencing and stuff like that, right? Because it requires a lot of skill to do it properly and safely and as a gentleman. Okay, that's number 10. How about number 9? Most dangerous freaking tools ever created by men. Do I have some here? Where's my wallet? Federal Reserve notes, currency. I don't have any money. I'm out of money. Please send me some money. Financial instruments. Think about it. Now you can have, in ancient times, there's some stuff that was kind of used as money, like gold and silver, but they have functional value. Gold, it never corrodes. In the modern context, it has great electrochemical, features to it. Like you can use it for all kinds of stuff. It's very unique, very, very shiny, very pretty, very malleable, all sorts of things, right? Silver, very, very good for a lot of stuff, right? But like, if you think about banking, you know how they invented the check system? I think it was the Knights Templar going back and forth to Jerusalem. is so dangerous on the road, they said, let's come up with a system where we can do long distance banking. And they invented the IOU, kind of in its current form of modern banking, and it disrupted all of the whole European economy, and they got in trouble and guys tried to get them and all that stuff, right? But you think about the speculative markets can amplify greed, temptations by the measure of your wealth and stuff like that has been very dangerous. Yielding money in its form to just trade quick here and there, you can asymmetrically wage financial war on one sector to the other where those relationships wouldn't naturally in trade exist, right? Normally the sea guys by the ocean would trade ocean guy stuff and the guys in the mountains would trade mountain guy stuff. But now the playing field has been like, now you can trade cross space and time at an unnatural pace, and has created a lot of power. A lot of power. People can consolidate wealth without having to do all that much if they're just sneaky and smart on how that tool works. So money, I think, is one of the most dangerous tools ever invented. That's number 9. Number 8, radio and phonographs. Things where you can record what you're saying and project it to somebody you don't even know at long distance. You got like ghostly voices coming out of the radio. Think about it. Those are strangers from afar. Do you know these people? How the hell do you know they're not trying to trick you or shaping your morals, shaping your mood? So if now some guy from California can make Rex depressed by what he's talking about in California, when I live in North Dakota, I do not live in California. There's no need for me to be depressed. There's no need for me to panic either from what's going on in Portland or whatever, Venezuela. I don't care. But now that there's radios, they can spread their stuff everywhere, totally bypassing your natural communal communications, right? It's like seductive influences in your house. You invited people to talk in your house that you never met. You can project insanity across the airwaves. See what I mean? Extremely powerful tool. Man, that is dangerous. Should they ban it? Well, they do have the FCC for that reason. It's like, hold on a minute here. Not everyone gets to fill the airwaves with their ideas. Then he talks censorship and stuff. Should we have the Wild West of communications or what? See, it is powerful. Why do people fear it and want to control it? Because it is powerful. And you have to admit there's a certain amount of responsibility required on the behalf of the projector and on the behalf of the receiver. You now have to be more disciplined, to discipline your ears to turn off and cause you to turn off the radio when it's getting crazy. The responsibility just went up because it's a very, very powerful tool. That was number 8. Number 7, chemical and biological engineering. There are substances that should probably not exist on the face of the earth, all over the face of the earth now. And think about the drastic change on life forms and entire ecosystems completely wiped out because of our reliance on chemical engineering, biological engineering, monoculture, stuff like that. Totally changed the world. And through manipulation and twisting of naturally existing systems, it's incredibly powerful to potentially be helpful. I'm glad they made soap. That's a great invention, right? I'm glad they made gunpowder. That makes it easier for me to feed my family. I'm glad they, invented the processes to have high quality refined metals. You know how toxic it is to refine like copper in a smelter? It's freaking toxic. So chemical engineering, biological engineering, man, it also erases a certain amount through the invention of medical stuff, accountability. It's just the quick fix. You don't have to be accountable to your health now. You can live however you want, and the doctor will just throw some pills at me and it won't hurt. Whew. Or it can be used for good. When you actually are sick, there are some things that can help you, right? So chemical and biological engineering, it can be good or bad depending on the user. Is it intended for constructive purposes, or is it intended to bypass true constructive purposes and just make a few bucks over here quickly that actually leads to short-term constructiveness and then long-term entropy? See, that's the moral discipline required and why that dangerous tool needs to be used with the proper training and the proper discipline. Okay? Now, you can't legislate any of these tools, and you can't really legislate people's folly if they're not hurting someone else. But if you think about all the rules that exist, when you start hurting other people, that's where there's very, 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 very strict laws. Okay, now you're actually like endangering all of society, right? So, interesting thought. How about this one? The automobile. That would be number 6. The automobile unnaturally shortens space and time. 20 miles in the 1700s was a full 1 or 2 day journey. You're staying overnight. And while you're in town, you better make your yearly trip and you better have all the contingencies in place for any potential emergency. It's a huge deal. Nowadays, it's not that far. So the safety we have created in distance and the proximities that used to like if you think about how society was set up with its towns and its farm distribution and people and just the scale upon which the world was built, we've made it smaller by speeding up travel to such an unnatural pace. You need to utilize your automobile. And I'm not just talking crashing into things. I'm talking about the responsibility not to run yourself beyond your actual capabilities if the car didn't exist. If cars ceased to exist in the United States at the snap of the fingers, say EMP took out all the power, no more fuel production, no more fuel delivery, half the cars turned off because they're computer driven, everyone's gonna check out. They're not gonna make it. Why? They over relied on it. They didn't have the responsibility or discipline to maintain proper proximity to their actual resources on a degree that could support them in real life. Became over dependent on a entire civilization that can only exist with railroads, cars, and shipping. Now you're vulnerable to the men in control of those 3 things. The railroads, trains, planes, and automobiles and all that. Now you are at their command and mercy. Unless you've maintained wisdom and training, you can utilize cars, but don't be so far away from your actual resources, and don't get distracted from your close by resources and bypass those and construct that house that's overhanging the cliff, like on that Lemony Snicket cartoon or movie, where that really stressed out lady's house is like hanging by a thread off this cliff, and she's like worried the doorknob's going to explode and hit the... Yeah, that's what happens. That's why society's so nervous, because we know we couldn't survive without our horseless carriages, could we? And the trucking and all that, because we're so disconnected from reality now. That's why the automobile is number 6. Very, very dangerous tool. Television. Man, that movie, The Network. You ever see it? 1975, I think. Howard Beale was the newscaster on there who just like kind of had a brain tumor and went crazy and started saying the truth on the news. Pretty funny movie. Says the TV's the most gosh darn powerful weapon the world's ever seen in the whole world. You live by the tube, you sleep by the tube, everything you know comes from the tube. You've never been nowhere, you've done nothing, but you think you have. You don't read books anymore, you have no idea. It's just a constant circus of entertainment. You're a complete slave to it, and you're oblivious that you are one. Yeah, magic moving shapes flickering into the eyeballs of entire generations. Man, shaping and having more, by the way, moral gravity and more say in your culture, your fashions, and values than your parents do. I was talking to a old mentor of mine that I had years ago recently, and he said something to the effect of like, "What's with these kids all day?" I went to the hotel, and the lady was like this, or the lady that at the post office or whatever. Just the moral degradation. Where do they learn this? I'm like, dude, school and the TV. The television spreads the disease like that. Monkey see, monkey do. When you act like one of them, you know what I mean. You got to rise above that animal nature to just entertain yourself all the time and act like a crazy fool. You've got to be disciplined in life, okay? And recognize that the TV is broadcasting a program trying to advertise something to make you somebody's slave to a product or something. It's a super weapon. TV is a super weapon. Why do you think that the culture fell when they invented it? In the 50s, when they went into every home, boom, every sector face planted into the ground in terms of discipline and morality and creativity. Families, because people are TV heads. Number 4, you might not like this one, but I think it's actually very, very powerful. She has shown it in history. It's what freed humanity from one problem and jumped them straight into another one. Out of the frying pan and into the fire is a true statement. The printing press. The 4th most dangerous tool ever invented. Why? If you had to handwrite a document and it couldn't just be mass produced cheaply, how much more would that document have to have in terms of value for someone to warrant $50,000 to reproduce it with a scribe and several years of time and 50 barrels of ink? And you got to kill 40 sheep to get enough leather to write out on the parchments. Only the most long-standing, time-proven pieces of text that are highly valued and highly important and have panned out to be highly valuable would ever make it into text. But if you can just print stuff, anyone's ideas, like, you know what I thought about this? I don't know. I don't care either. I want to have my ideas. If I'm going to hear ideas in a book, they better be solid. The printing press made it way cheap to communicate to people on a mass scale, to share that knowledge of good and evil. Remember that story? How eating the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil was a bad idea. Now you can spread it on in mass scale. Boom, 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 boom. Just knock them out. Look at how it reshaped the world. Was it for the better? In some ways, absolutely. Created the Renaissance, right? But what happens when all the other books started getting printed? Oofta. Go to your kid's school library if you're crazy enough to have a kid at the school. What the hell's this? Yeah, I know. Thank Gutenberg for that one, right? Thanks, Gutenberg. Appreciate you making it easy for psychos to mass produce their books without scribes who have to actually, you know what I mean? There's no scribe on earth that would mass produce some of those books that are in your kid's library. And that would be great, wouldn't it? I'm not against knowledge. I'm not against books, and I'm not against the printing press. It's a tool that should be yielded with fear and discipline. Number 3, and this is a big statement, artificial intelligence. You can now surf the internet, that's the next one on the list, at an extremely fast pace. Artificial intelligence is like having 10,000 high school kids on their phones at the same time, and you ask them a question, and then they all get that's the story they're going to get for you. Now you have immediate access to the problems I said before. Immediate access to all of the knowledge of good and evil immediately fast. Should the internet be that easy to navigate? Because AI only knows what's on the internet, you know that? It doesn't know anything that's not on the computer. How would it know until it's on the computer? It's only the Elohim, or the power of the computer world, has no idea what goes on outside the computer unless it was put into there. And who put it in there? How did they twist the input? What angle did they take the picture at? Yeah. It mimics thought itself. It can mimic creativity. It can be an incredible, powerful tool for artwork, speech, decision-making, statistical analysis, compiling data. It's going to really change the world. More than probably, it's going to change the world like the Industrial Revolution did, or more, I think. Because it's very, very powerful in a world where everyone's on the computer. Now, in a world where no one's on the computer, it has zero power. I think it has zero power in the Amish world, really. Except they might be, circumnavigated for whatever, who knows, right? But, yeah, what a deal. Like, that's a whole nother topic. Number 2, the second most powerful tool in the world, and this is what AI is effectively drawing from. So it doesn't get to be number 1, or it doesn't get to be number 2. It has to be number 3 because it needs number 2 in order to get there, the internet. The internet and social media, where everyone's life is now on the internet, including a large part of my ideas. Man, that's unlimited knowledge of everyone and what they're doing and all their ideas. Unlimited knowledge of good and evil at the fingertips of every man, woman, and child in the world. You can go now anywhere in the world. I saw some of the most backwards countries in the world. Everyone now has one of these things. They're walking around filming themselves with these everywhere. You can go to the Bushmen, you can go on the Aborigines, you can go to freaking middle of Asia, where it's like really, 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 really behind the rest of the world in technology, and everyone's got this. That was the plan. Super dangerous. The internet, you can, at the speed of light, spread anything you want. Good, evil, filth, cleanliness. See, in the old days, one crazy guy would get naturally filtered through proximity when he got shunned out of the village and had to live on the side of town. Now, he has total standoff from accountability. He can just launch craziness into the internet, into the entire world. They don't have context. There's no accountability there. That's really, really, really powerful tool. It can reshape, it has totally reshaped the entire world's direction and momentum. The internet is a huge, giant, powerful tool. Why? Because we live there. We live on the internet, don't we? And the last and most, number 1 on the list, the most powerful tool that will straighten out all the problems below. And this is the one you might think is cliche, but think about it. If they exist on the scale they say they do, which, man, nuclear weapons, the ultimate power of destruction to erase entire cities and nations in a second. You give mankind the responsibility of the apocalyptic fire that's going to take the world out. Hand it to politicians because of the great ability to demonstrate wisdom and restraint 24/7. One slip for 1 second, one miscalculation in judgment. Wow. And that's all she wrote. So you're leaning on, you've now handed the apocalyptic fire to politicians. And do they have the reverence and the responsibility to wield that with wisdom? I would say no, but I think that we all knew that day was coming at some point, and that, because of the great cycle of life, will very well fix all the other problems connected to that one that are below it. Because it's the reset button. It's the reset button. And you can read in the book what's going to happen to the kings of the earth, and the 10 kings will burn the entire earth down with fire. And it will be him that puts it in their hearts to do so, right? It's part of the deal. Shouldn't be scared of it. But it is something that is like, that's, and you don't understand how powerful that one is until it happens. Then you'd be like, oh, wow, everything's on fire all of a sudden, everything. It's going to be pretty rough. So, very entertaining. I hope you guys found this list to be, to give you a little bit of pause when you just hand this to a 3-year-old. You're going to hand this to a kid, teenager? Even worse. Teenager thinks they know how to handle it. They think they got this. Are you kidding me? I'd rather hand them, like, if it was, I'd rather hand them a rabid porcupine. This thing's dangerous. You know how dangerous this is for long-term safety? This thing is powerful. So same as the internet. Television, just going to sit them on there and not sit there like you're flying them to land them on an aircraft carrier in the dark. Like that amount of intensity on the stick and the controls so you don't crash them, and you know what I mean? Like that's the amount of care required, like a Navy pilot trying to land on an aircraft carrier at night. That's the amount of fear you should have on just handing this over, because it's literally like your entire soul's going to connect to it. Why? Because they're wired to be like that with stuff. So be super careful. If you have any thoughts, please share them below. If there's something that was overlooked that you think, man, that should have been on the list too, share it below. Love to hear what you got to say. Rock and roll. You guys have a wonderful day. Rex out.